This week, we welcome Theresa Lanowitz, Chief Evangelist at LevelBlue, to discuss cybersecurity in the business. In the Leadership and Communications segment, blind spots in the C suite and boardroom, evolving cybersecurity, aligning strategy with business growth, how to lead like a coach, and more. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. Your customers' and employees' identities are your responsibility to keep safe. But who is helping you stay safe from identity-based threats? Identity is the key to getting security right. And with the right identity partner, so much more is possible for your business than you thought. From strengthening cybersecurity to increasing revenue to reducing inefficiencies and costs, Okta unlocks growth and new possibilities for its customers. Go to securityweekly.com/Okta to learn more about Okta and the company's commitment to leading the fight against identity attacks. Let's talk about something that's becoming increasingly important for enterprise companies worldwide: cyber risk management. Traditionally, cyber risk has been managed manually in silos, separate from the business's core operations. The future is about getting real-time risk insights benchmarked against your industry peers through automation. And CyberSaint's CyberStrong platform is leading the charge. CyberStrong is not just another point solution. It's a revolutionary platform. It's a quantified top-down risk approach where your unique cyber risks inform C-suite decision-making to identify your top 5 cyber risks and the controls to mitigate them. Sign up for your free cyber risk analysis by visiting securityweekly.com/cybersaint. ThreatLocker implements a least privileged approach to cybersecurity, blocking every executable unless specifically authorized by your team. This methodology mitigates ransomware, supply chain attacks, and zero-day exploits, and ensures 24/7, 365 protection for your organization. To learn more about how ThreatLocker can help prevent known and unknown threats in your digital environment, safeguard your data and operations from threat actors, and align your organization with respected compliance frameworks, visit securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker.
Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 363, recorded September 9th, 2024. I am your host, Matt Alderman. Football season has officially begun, so look out, folks. You're going to get a bunch of Monday morning quarterbacking. Joining me remotely for this interview segment today is my co-host, Mr. Ben Carr. Hey, Ben.
Hey, Matt. How you doing?
Big win by the Texas team this weekend, beating Michigan. I don't know if you watch college football, but that was a pretty big win.
Yeah, I'm not such a football fan. I was dealing with power issues this weekend, so not a lot of TV either. Just power up and down all weekend. It was more frustrating.
Yeah, luckily no weather issues up here, and the cooler weather in Texas is definitely appreciated right now. So that's
Oh yeah,
that's
it's
been nice.
certainly cooled
Yeah.
off.
Oh yeah. This segment is sponsored by LevelBlue. To learn more, please visit securityweekly.com/LevelBlue. Theresa Lanowitz is the Chief Cybersecurity Evangelist at LevelBlue, a strategic alliance between AT&T and Willjam Ventures that simplifies cybersecurity for the business, fueling our global economy. With a distinguished career in technology industry, Theresa is a globally respected leader known for her deep and diverse experience in cybersecurity. Theresa frequently speaks at major industry conferences, sharing her insights on high-tech trends, AI integration, and the evolving threat landscape. Theresa, welcome back to Business Security Weekly.
Thanks so much, Matt. It's great to be here with you.
Well, you were just on a few weeks ago, and then you went on vacation, and so I'm going to welcome you back from vacation with an interview.
Well, thank you so much. It's just great to just, dive right back in right where I left off.
Yeah, pretty much. So the last time we spoke, we were digging into your latest research report around cyber resilience. And in that interview segment, we kind of talked through some of the challenges facing organizations when it came to business resilience, cyber security resilience, et cetera. In this segment, I think we want to dig into So what do I do about it? Like, what are the things that people really need to start thinking about? And there's some really interesting like tips and tricks in this research report that I think organizations need to start with when it comes to, okay, how do I start to build a resilient business practice that also includes cybersecurity resilience?
Yes, totally agree with you. And I think that's a great way to frame this report and to frame the discussion around it. So take a look at some of the challenges and barriers. And I think that when you look at the challenges and barriers that we identified, we probably weren't seeing anything really new, right? People have probably felt that for a long time. I think what we've provided is some data to back up those actual problems, those actual challenges that organizations have. And I think some of the things that we identify, as you mentioned at the end of the report, such as identify what your barriers are, make sure you're aligning cybersecurity with the entire business, make sure that you're looking outside for that trusted third party advisor to be able to come in and really revamp your overall cybersecurity strategy. I think those are some really nice bits of sort of advice that we can take forward. Maybe we can talk a little bit more about those.
Yeah, and I think before those, I think though this whole concept of prioritizing IT and security and building into everything you do is probably a first step. Like the question is, are businesses ready to embrace a like a security first or secure by design kind of concept, right? We've talked about this for a long time, Theresa, in the industry around this concept of secure by design. But even your research talks a little bit about the need to still prioritize cybersecurity into everything. And that starts a little bit with kind of like from the executive down, some cultural stuff. Like what's
Yeah,
let's
I'd
unpack
even
that
pitch it
for
a
a
bit
second.
differently, Matt. The question is, it isn't should they? It's or are they ready? It's like, can they afford not to?
I think that's a really good point. Can they afford not to? And we've been talking about this as an industry for well over a decade because Matt, you brought up this idea of secure by design. This says, let's build security into everything we're doing, regardless of what it is. If it is an accounts payable application, which nobody writes anymore, or if it is a new type of network, which we're bringing in, which people are bringing in now because they're bringing in edge computing, IoT devices, that sort of thing, but secure by design, bringing security into everything they're doing. And I can recall prior to joining LevelBlue, prior to joining AT&T Cybersecurity, I was an analyst. And one of the things that when I was talking to enterprises would always say, security is a drag on what we're doing. We can't afford to do it because it takes too long. And I've been at LevelBlue now 5 years. So five, not that long ago, 5 years ago, people were saying security is a drag. And then I think what we saw is that a perfect storm came about. We had the economics of the cloud. The economics of the cloud say that it is so affordable that you can afford to do all of those things that you said you couldn't do before because you're not buying all of that extra infrastructure to create that environment as close to production as possible. You can spin it up very easily inside of a cloud. The development tools have become so good. The software that we run from a cybersecurity perspective has become so good as well. So there are fewer false positives. The security tools work better together. So we're in a situation now, and I think you're right, Ben, where you say, can you afford not to? But this idea of secure by design is critical. And if you look at what secure by design really evolves into, it evolves into this idea of building a cyber resilient organization that is looking at the entire IT estate and saying, what type of visibility do I have in that entire IT estate if my entire IT estate goes down from a man-made event, some type of security event, or some type of natural disaster? Can I come back on quickly? And can I continue to serve my customers to the service level agreements that I've mandated before? So it also then evolves into a lot of compliance and regulation. Do you have the right types of security in mind when it comes to regulation? Do you have your SBOM, your software bill of materials? So this idea of saying secure by design it leads into a whole host of other things that if you're not doing it correctly from the beginning, you'll have problems further down the line.
You brought up an interesting point there. And you said that as this has changed, the cloud has made it more economical, right? Easier, faster. But I think it brings its own host of challenges, right? Which is a challenge to CISOs in that the assumption sometimes from the business is, oh, we've gone to the cloud, so it's all handled by them. Like we don't
Right.
have to worry about the risk, right? You still own the risk as the business. You have to think about it that way, and I think that while it has made it easier in some cases, it's also made it more challenging in that I've seen a lot of cloud providers that actually aren't doing what they need to do from a security side, and the oversight becomes super challenging, right?
Correct. Yeah. And we see that time and time again, misconfigurations of the cloud or organizations saying, well, I'm running it in the cloud. Choose your favorite public cloud provider. So therefore, I don't have to worry about making sure that I don't have things. So let's take simple things inside of an application, things such as cross site scripting, SQL injection. And it's interesting because those things should be taken care of with all of the tools we have available. Those simple things such as cross site scripting, SQL injection, they should be tested out from the beginning, and yet, even though we have all of this technology at our disposal, the economics of the cloud being there, we're still seeing those types of software vulnerabilities being inside of applications that we're running.
Yeah. And again, I think part of this comes down to prioritizing security and the approach a little bit, right? I mean, it, look, COVID did a lot to accelerate digital transformation, as we've talked about before, right? Because they had to, because it was a business survival requirement for a lot of organizations to make that shift. So we kind of threw security out the window for a while because we had to, right? But unless you're serious about protecting the organization, are you really prioritizing those cybersecurity requirements as part of your overall resilience program? Because if you haven't, then you're in a situation where a misconfiguration or a vulnerability in one of these brand new applications you had to roll out as part of your response to COVID now potentially takes you down on the other side. And how many organizations have actually kind of sat down and said, whoa, we went a little fast. Maybe we got to back up just a little bit, put a few protections in place before we continue to push the gas, because otherwise, you potentially continue to see a lot of kind of outages or resilience activities from these systems.
And a lot
Yeah,
of that
you're
emanates
absolutely
for tone at the top. Like it's a top down thing. Like if you don't have that support at the executive level from the CEO and from the board, it's really hard to get that pushed forward. Do you
But
agree,
I think
Teresa?
that's an interesting point, Ben. You talk about it is a top down issue. Agreed, it's a top down issue. Everybody you talk to says, yes, cybersecurity is my number one concern.
But they don't.
Yet, when it,
That doesn't meet it in the field in practice, right? Like it's yes, it's a
correct,
concern, but they don't articulate that out as actually being one of their concerns in the practices they follow.
correct. And if you look at budgets, budgets
Yeah,
for a CISO are largely reactionary versus budgets for a CIO or a CTO are more proactive. So a CIO and a CTO knows exactly what they're going to be able to do every year. They do their business planning, they come back, they say, here's how much I need, they do the budget negotiation, they get a budget. The CISO comes back and says, here's what we need to do. And the CISO might get some of that money that they're requesting, but then they'll get money thrown at them to fix a problem when a problem does arise. And so this is the same type of thing that probably 10, 15 years ago we did with software applications. Software applications, the development team, the quality assurance teams couldn't get a proactive budget. They were largely reactionary if there was some type of defect that made it into production. And we're dealing with the same thing now on the security side. You get vulnerabilities that make it into production, or you have to do something to deal with new compliance or regulation, or deal with a competitor's breach, or deal with some type of merger and acquisition that you might be going through as an organization. And you get that reactionary budget. So it's very difficult for you as a CISO to be proactive and say, here's what we're going to do in the first quarter. And oh, by the way, this year our business initiative is this. And here's how we're aligning our cybersecurity spending and our cybersecurity strategy with those business initiatives. And I think some of that comes back to the CISO as well. The CISO and anybody from the security team who does speak with the board, who does speak with the CEO, needs to be able to couch why cybersecurity is so important in business terms versus in cybersecurity terms. And that's an age-old problem.
Yeah,
It
if you look at
is.
funded projects from IT, I mean, a lot of them align to business objectives, right? The
Hmm.
reason why
Mhm.
they've got something mapped out for the next year, next 2 years priority is because it aligns to, oh, we've got to upgrade the CRM because it's an initiative to force, the ability of business to execute better, right? And I think CISOs need to become more adept at trying to figure out how to do that and how to sell the fact that it's not just a reactive thing. It truly could be a competitive advantage if done right for marketing and to selling to your customers, but as well, the whole issue of resilience, right? Like if we can't keep the business running with a cyber incident, like what is the impact? What is the
Mhm.
downside? And talking in the language of business instead of, I've got to fix these, 1,000 vulnerabilities within a deadline. Like that doesn't resonate and matter to the board.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where we as an industry, we've been for probably the past decade or so, is that we're so enamored, I think, with the technology and the fact that, oh, we can identify these vulnerabilities or we can say we thwarted this many potential attacks. But that doesn't matter because what matters is what happens in this event of some type of unforeseen or unexpected outage. What happens to the business and what happens from that cyber resilience perspective.
I would say it's been 2 decades at least. And I say that because, look, in the early days when we were going through regulatory compliance, third party risk, et cetera, right? And this was over 20 years ago, we had this challenge. We haven't solved it in at least 20 years, Theresa. And I think this is the important thing that your research touches on a little bit, but I wanted to double click in on is as security professionals, we need to start to understand that the language of the business is about dollars and cents. The
Mhm.
reason we don't get budgets is because we can't justify budgets because we don't know that deploying a technology or deploying policies or whatever it is, how much it's actually going to move the risk needle. We
Mhm.
talk about this on this show a lot. Security is a risk management discipline. And to me, the only way to justify spend or budgets is to show some sort of return on investment. And a lot of people say, well, you can't do it, you can't do it. I argue that you can. And I argue that is that if you can quantify your risks, and identify projects that reduce your risk, then you can use the cost of the project and the risk reduction to actually create a return on investment for those dollars. And I think CISOs would be in a much better position to have these conversations around budget with the CEO, the CFO, and the board if they figured out how to quantify cyber risks. And I think that's the big gap we still have to solve. I think we're making progress, but to me, that's like the holy grail. If we can get there, then we put security leadership in a much better position around budgeting.
I think you're correct. And you said we've been dealing with this for the past 2 decades. Time flies when you're having fun working on this stuff, right? So, and you talk about this idea of return on investment. And I think what you identified is looking at the quantifiable risk is it's a different and it's nuanced, but it's a very important nuance to say, here's our risk versus here's our return on investment. Because you recall 5, 10 years ago, everybody would go out and build their ROI calculator. And of course, these ROI calculators were biased. And then you started to get the analyst firms come into the picture who said, well, we can build this ROI calculator and we're not biased. And, it was a cottage industry basically. But what we found out in this research is from a cybersecurity perspective, organizations are saying across the board, asking for a return on investment for cybersecurity, 80% said it's an outmoded way of thinking to say,
Yep.
let's look at a simple ROI in the way we typically calculate it. But I think what you're saying is it's more of a narrative. It's more of if we don't do this, here are the potential problems. So it's more of a narrative versus saying,
It's more aligned to insurance, right? It's a buy down on
yeah,
risk, right? Like you have to think about it. It's not an ROI in the typical sense that look, we invest $5, we're going to get 10 back. It's we're going to invest $5 and there's going to be a potential avoidance, right, of some
Right. Of
calculated
$10 or
figure. And
whatever it is.
yeah,
Correct. Yeah.
right.
And
It's
it
that avoidance, and that avoidance is key. And that avoidance is that back of the envelope calculation where it's that infinitesimal possibility that something could happen. And I think we've seen a lot of events this year in 2024 that you think, well, who would have thought that that would have happened? And we see the ripple effect, and that ripple effect just goes across your vertical industry and your whole supply chain. So it's identifying what that risk is and what that risk tolerance is. I think that's an important thing
So,
to do.
so Teresa, when you think about risk in the buy down, right? Like I in a way, think about uh, early 2000s, right? When a lot of vendors talked about FUD, right? And FUD became a bad thing, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right? It
Hmm.
was how you market to people on this fear factor. People kind of turned away from it. Now I'm wondering, like, is a percentage of that hesitancy or the problem with the board is that we're marketing almost to the fear of something happening, which is what we do. We're buying down the risk of this massive event happening, and we continue to see these large events. I think ransomware, right, is a great example to look at it that way. Fortune 50 company, $75 million payout recently. Like, that's a big number. But going to the board and marketing on, hey, you should be scared that this will happen, that's a challenge, right? Because it
Mhm.
almost puts those people on the back feet of like, are you trying to scare me into this investment? Like, how do you advise people to look at it maybe differently, or do you like, do you agree with that concept? Is there some additional way we could think about it?
I think we have to move beyond, as you mentioned, that FUD, that fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And the fear no longer is something that works in our favor, because we know that the problem is not the nefarious hacker in a hoodie sitting in the corner from some nation state. And we shouldn't market on fear. We should market on reality, market on risk. So if you are in a vertical market that is most concerned about ransomware, you should bolster your systems to make sure that you can remediate effectively against ransomware. If you're in an industry vertical that is more concerned about business email compromise, bolster your systems to work on that. And that comes down to having these discussions. And this is one of the things we haven't brought up yet, but communication, that cross functional communication between the organization that the CISO runs, the organization that the CIO runs, and the organization that the CTO runs, that communication is critical, along with communication out to the line of business. And so many organizations, we found this in our research, so many organizations, they still live in those silos. And we start to see the erosion of silos, and start is the key word there. So it's not marketing or going to the board and talking about fear. It's about going to the board and speaking from a holistic perspective across the CIO, the CTO, and the CISO, and the line of business, and also looking at reality, saying, our competitors got hit with this. Here's what happened to our competitors. Or we are in an adjacent industry to this industry that got hit with this type of cyber activity. We should bolster against that. Or we are in, this is where it comes back to cyber resilience. We're in a situation where we could be taken offline for so many hours if there is a problem with updating our software, if there is a weather problem in our where our corporate headquarters are, something to that effect.
Yeah, the there's a couple great lines in here. I'm just going to point out for people who look at this futures report, right? Balancing innovation and cyber risk is paramount in today's rapidly evolving business environment. And I'll give you an example. I got $1 million to spend, and I'm going to go spend it in AI, which is innovative, or am I going to spend it to address cyber risk? If you're a risk professional or a security professional and you can't make that argument, you're going to lose out to that innovation budget all day long, right? And I think it's important from a communication perspective, as you just talked about, Teresa. Like, this is the stuff we have to learn better to communicate such that we can make those decisions around, where do I spend those dollars? Am I going to go spend it on an AI innovation project, or am I going to use it to buy down cyber risk? And I
Mhm.
think that's, like I said, that's where I think we struggle as an industry still.
And
Yeah,
I
and
think that goes.
go ahead,
Go ahead,
Teresa.
Ben.
I
No,
was just going to say, like, I think it's super important that, like, you guys have both mentioned communication, and like, it doesn't happen in the 15 minutes, maybe 30 if you're lucky in the boardroom, right? It happens when you're taking time outside of that to understand that AI initiative with the CIO or the CTO. So then you can talk intelligently about it to maybe the CFO or the board, right? So hopefully you have those relationships you're building up so you can make that argument. So when you do go in 15 minutes, like, everybody's already briefed and understands that it's not a one-time event, which a lot of newer CISOs get confused with.
Right.
Right. It's not a one-time event. And I want to go back to something that you said, Matt, this idea of the innovation budget's going to win out against the cyber risk buyback budget all day, every day. But it goes back to what we started talking about at the beginning, which is this whole idea of, communication across the multiple disciplines inside the organization and secure by design. So if you say, I'm going to spend a chunk of my money on this new innovative AI procedure that we want to use, great. A chunk of that money is going to AI innovation, but part of that budget, and that's where in our research we found this, security has to be included as part of that innovation budget.
Mhm.
So that just has to, and Ben, you bring up such a great point that you're having these conversations outside of the boardroom. So when there is an innovation initiative out there, organizations can say, okay, great, we have this innovation initiative. Here are these other three things that we have to worry about. We have to worry about
Yeah.
performance. We have to worry about security, that sort of thing.
And that's a cultural thing, right? Like I've used security champions, so have somebody who's in that department, their full-time job is part of that, whatever that innovation team is, but build the memory within the organization that, hey, if we're going to start this project and it's $1 million, I've got so much for marketing, so much for innovation, I've got 10% for security, right? Like 2% for security, whatever it is, there's a percentage of that budget that has to be aligned from the get-go that goes back to the security teams to be able to effectively fund the security around that initiative.
Right, right. And what any initiative has to do three things. It has to work from a just from a functional perspective. It has to perform, it has to be fast enough, and it has to be secure enough. And so those three things, it sounds pretty easy that it has to work, it has to perform, and it has to be secure enough. But I think we've all seen these types of innovations that come to market where maybe they're a little too slow and you kind of lose interest in it and it just doesn't work for you, or maybe it just doesn't work, or maybe the security is at risk and you can tell. So keeping those three things in mind, I think, are really paramount. And you start to look at functionality, performance, and security, then you start to kind of get into sort of these non-functional types of requirements. And security is certainly a non-functional type of requirement. You're not going to see it manifest itself on the screen like, there's my security feature. But it is that non-functional requirement, which is critical to any type of innovation project.
Well, you might if it's two-factor authentication. You have.
Yeah, I
Well,
was just
yes,
thinking, yeah.
yeah, okay.
It might. But I hear you, right? Just to wrap this up, the end of this report, 5 steps to future cyber resilience, I think is a really great guide for organizations on a nice blueprint, Theresa, on the kind of the steps you need to go through. And it's a lot of what we've already talked about. Identify the barriers, which we did in our first segment. Be secure by design, which we obviously spent some time on here. Align cyber investments with the business. We spent a lot of time there because it's so critical, right? If we're not aligning our cybersecurity investments with the business in a business language context, I think we were going to struggle. Build that support ecosystem through communication. That transforms your strategy. And I think it's a really good summary of kind of the steps through this research report that you guys did.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Theresa, thank you so much for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
Thank you so much for having me again, Matt. It's been great to be here.
Always a pleasure. To learn how to align cybersecurity with the business, please visit securityweekly.com/LevelBlue. We're going to take a quick break and then cover the leadership and communications articles for this week.